Things are changing here in China. At the beginning of December, China was continuing to pursue very strict COVID-19 prevention protocols. Among the major protocols in place were frequent COVID testing of residents required for access to public areas such as shopping malls and public transportation. All people have records based on their local ID card or, for non-locals, travel documents such as a passport.
And these records can easily be called up on your phone to show when your last test was.
If you couldn't show a recent one, you couldn't enter the building or board the bus or whatever you were trying to do. You also could be required to show a tracking code that used data from your phone to show where you'd been in the past 2 weeks to make sure there weren't any high-risk areas with lots of COVID. Another protocol, lockdowns for areas affected by COVID.
While most were not as extensive as the 2-month citywide lockdown I experienced in Shanghai,
there were frequent local lockdowns when cases were detected. These might end fairly quickly, but they also might not. It really depended how quickly the cases went down. Another protocol, centralized quarantine for persons testing positive and their close contacts. I never experienced this personally, but some friends of mine did. There were some cases detected at their university campus, and several of them had to go to quarantine hotels for a few days while they were tested to try to prevent the spread of the virus.
In fairness, I saw pictures of these hotel rooms and they were actually pretty nice.
But still, this was involuntary quarantine, so no fun. Lastly, heavy restrictions on travel. International travel has been reduced to a mere trickle, thanks to the requirement that all inbound passengers for mainland China quarantine for several days upon arrival. The exact number of days keeps changing. Even domestic travel has become more difficult recently due to the possibility of restrictions upon arrival in a new city. For example, when we first arrived in Ningbo here in July, for the first 3 days, we couldn't go onto the school campus of my current employer here.
Recently, Shanghai made a rule that persons who haven't been in Shanghai at least 5 days cannot go to most public places, such as shopping malls.
These restrictions didn't prevent domestic travel, but they made it more difficult. Things are changing now, though. This month has seen a big change. On December 5th, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't required to present a health code showing that I had a recent COVID test when I boarded the metro.
And many other places like shopping malls and restaurants have also stopped checking these.
While showing one's code to enter a place is a relatively minor inconvenience, the big difference is that people are no longer required to test so often in order to maintain access to those places.
One tack-on effect to this is that some COVID testing facilities near my home have already closed down due to lack of need. Also changed, the tracking code has been completely retired.
You can't even get one anymore. Another big change came when China announced that persons who test positive will no longer be required to go to a government-designated quarantine facility,
but will rather be permitted to quarantine at home.
This also represents a significant loosening of the former policy. One of the main reasons people here have dreaded the virus is not so much the disease itself, but the knowledge that they would be taken to a quarantine facility if they got it. Now, this is no longer true, except in severe cases. Intercity travel restrictions are also being loosened.
Shanghai has dropped its rule on new arrivals being barred from public places, which makes it much easier for people to visit Shanghai.
Similar changes exist in other cities. Not everything is back to normal, though. Certain high-density areas continue to require frequent COVID testing. Notably, schools do. I know this well since I work at one. We continue to have on-campus testing a couple times a week. Then again, this too represents something of a loosening up, in that just a few weeks ago we were testing 4 times a week. Furthermore, while domestic travel is freer now,
inbound international travelers remain subject to centralized quarantine.
As relatively few travelers are willing or able to do this, there are just not many flights into China now. And this means that, aside from the hassle of quarantining, at one's own expense, I might add, the cost of flights into China is simply exorbitant right now. This is actually the main reason why I haven't been back to the United States in a long time. I could travel there and return, as long as I got back in time to complete my quarantine before I needed to be back to work.
But the cost of flights is just too high now, though it has been slowly decreasing.
There is talk now that quarantine requirements for inbound passengers could be dropped soon. But for now, all that speculation is just that, speculation. At this time, we continue to wait for further information. Well, that's the latest on China's COVID situation. Hope this was informative to you. If it was, and you'd like to see any further updates I may make, this would be a great time to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. See you all next time. Bye!